Well, 'cause some idiot named Jason Monroe said something about that. I heard JJ Reddick said something about me. JJ, you better calm down, because when you come for the king, you better not miss.
Did he name you specifically, or was he just talking about folks on TV?
He said something about we're the reason people ain't watching this crappy product we got. I said, JJ, yeah, us, like we out there jacking up 103s a night. You just a dead man walking. They got rid of Frank Vogel, who did a good job. They got rid of Darvin Ham, who did a good job. But you came out there thinking you were going to change things with that same ugly girl you went on a date with.
That was interesting. Thank you very much. And your rebuttal.
Well, we're waiting.
When it comes to NBA Hall of Famer and media personality Charles Barkley, he's been a loud voice in the NBA for close to 40 years now. And during his time at TNT from the early 2000s till now, he's voiced his opinion very loudly every single season. And for a lot of fans, people who love basketball, that's why they love Charles. Is he always right? No, no one can be. But Charles has his convictions, his takes, that he believes in wholeheartedly.
It was a 2-on-1. Oh, and the dude could have got a layup
on the Knicks.
And he went out to the three-point line. It was a 2-on-1.
Knocked away. Payne has got it. Hart's with him. Bridges for three.
That's terrible.
So obviously Charles not a big fan of three-pointers being taken. 40 here, 50 there. Some teams combined upwards of 90 per game. I mean, the three-point shot has reached absurd levels. As looking at the average, it's nearly 38 per game. Back in 2016, during the Steph Curry hysteria, teams back in that era were taking less than 23. That's how far we've come in a little bit over a decade with a three-point shot. And of course, Charles right there giving his opinion on that, that's typical Charles Barkley. Doesn't like this playstyle of this era and the attitude of a lot of players. But nowadays in our current times, being critical, being kind of abrasive, it gets frowned upon by a lot of people, one of those being JJ Redick, the biggest douche in the NBA. And I'm sure you guys know this already, JJ kind of blames Charles in a roundabout way for the NBA's decline in popularity and overall interest.
If I'm a casual fan and you tell me every time I turn on the television that the product sucks, well, I'm not going to watch the product. And that's really what has happened over the last 10 to 15 years.
Man, this is some bullshit!
So that right there was JJ kind of just crying, pointing the finger at Charles Barkley, blaming him for the NBA's problems. And using Sir Charles as the scapegoat, it's very, very convenient, but also cowardly and just kind of slimy. As when it comes to Charles, as much as I love him, I'm not taking his word or anyone's word as gospel, the whole truth. They can't be impeached or questioned on their takes. If Charles says this game stinks, this game was awful, I'll watch the game for myself, determine that on my own. What Charles says, Shaq Kenny says, it's not gospel, the holy truth we have to believe blindly. What people like Reddick don't want to admit is that Charles Barkley's takes are resonating with a lot of NBA fans, specifically older fans who have seen multiple eras. And the funny thing for me covering the NBA's decline the past couple of weeks, at first, there was no problem, it's all sunshine and rainbows, it was flat out denial. Now those fans have acknowledged the problem, kind of accepted there is a problem in the NBA. But what are they doing? They're blaming Charles Barkley, which of course, a big time deflection, using him as the scapegoat. Think about that narrative shift. We went from it's illegal streams, there's nothing wrong, to now all of a sudden Charles Barkley, he's the biggest problem. Despite Charles being a big figure in the NBA for over 40 years.
It just don't add up!
Like I said in the intro, Barkley at TNT has been Charles Barkley since day one. He's been critical, brash, outspoken about players he dislikes, and teams he hates, and playstyles he despises. And for someone like JJ, even in his podcast days, who will he never blame, point the finger at? The modern day players, coaches, and just the modern day NBA. Those people on the court playing, not once responsible for the NBA's decline.
We can't have a guy making $95 million saying, I can't play basketball 4 days a week. You can't ask fans to pay that money
for a guy making $95 million won't play back-to-back games. If anybody think that's a good idea, they're crazy.
Okay, but how do you fix load management?
You play basketball, man.
So Charles right there laid it out pretty simple. Load management is an absolute disaster for the NBA and its fans. And of course, what happened just last season because of Charles complaining? Adam Silver put in a rule, you must play 65 games to qualify for awards or All-NBA teams. And lo and behold, a lot of players who were sitting out, quote-unquote injured, all of a sudden were playing 65, 70 games pretty easily. So that right there, Charles Barkley being critical, quote-unquote being negative, had a positive impact for the NBA and its fans. And once again, looking back at JJ, Charles' response to REDICK kind of making the scapegoat, absolutely brilliant, on point, and he said what needed to be said.
I heard JJ REDICK said something about me. JJ, you better calm down, because when you come for the king, you better not miss.
Did he name you specifically, or was he just talking about folks on TV?
He said something about we're the reason people ain't watching this crappy product we got. I said, JJ, us, like we out there jacking up 103s a night. JJ, I don't know Jason Monroe, I don't know who that is, but JJ, if you come for the king, you better not miss. You just a dead man walking. They got rid of Frank Vogel, who did a good job. They got rid of Darvin Ham, who did a good job. But you came out there thinking you were going to change things with that same ugly girl you went on the date with.
Something about Charles Barkley, and I'm like, huh? But Greg and both showed me. I didn't make it all the way through the clip, I got to be honest with you. My resting heart rate is probably 64. I watched the clip, it was 64. Literally don't care.
Face it, you're a terrible liar.
JJ REDICK right there, the basketball savant genius who's just light years ahead of everyone. He's just dumbfounded, speechless, and without words. Because of course, Charles gave him a Mike Tyson right hook to the face of uncut truth.
8, 9, can he make it? It's over! It's over!
Hey, young man, you got knocked the out.
For someone like REDICK, who makes every press conference a mini podcast, him being speechless, not responding, really says it all. Because of course, Charles said what everyone knows. Why this dude in LA is coaching the NBA is because of LeBron James. You are a former NBA player, ESPN analyst, turned podcaster, turned coach. You have no coaching experience, college, high school, middle school, even elementary school. You were a guy picked off the street as a stooge to be LeBron's piñata. That right there is the truth. And speaking of the truth, JJ REDICK's boss, LeBron James, almost had the exact same take as Charles Barkley concerning modern NBA.
It's a bigger conversation. It's not just the All-Star game. It's our game in general. Our game it's a lot of fucking threes being shot.
So that right there, what it sounded like was LeBron Barkley or Charles James saying the exact same thing as Barkley on TNT. Now, is Charles more outspoken? Says it more often? Of course he does. But even LeBron James, an active player, can realize the three-point shot, not the most appealing, entertaining thing when it's done over and over and over again and spammed with no end. If you love basketball, not just the NBA, you can look at different eras of the sport from the 50s till now and appreciate different things in all those eras. And at the same time, you can critique those eras, things they didn't have, or skills they lacked. And for today's modern NBA, they're not above criticism, critique, or slander by fans, the media, or current day players. And looking at someone like REDICK, again, this dude, an absolute douche, massive hypocrite. JJ REDICK will take a dump on any era pre his own era, because at JJ those eras are inferior and quite honestly beneath him.
Different kind of game. Once. Not fair. Once. That's fair. You also had 29 assists in an NBA game.
Oh, well, you know, he was being guarded by plumbers and firemen.
This game should be celebrated.
If you're someone like JJ, you throw stones, have these hot takes regarding past eras, you can't get your pants in a wall when current day fans criticize your era, the era you're playing in, the era you're coaching in. And again, looking at a positive impact Barkley's had, calling out load management lazy superstars, that is a net positive for the NBA, as was NBA coverage. Look at someone like Zion Williamson or Ben Simmons. These guys who get paid millions upon millions of dollars, the big bucks, endorsements, who simply don't play basketball their job. When Charles calls those guys out, that is a net positive for the NBA, despite Charles' take his coverage being quote-unquote negative. What people like JJ want is just blissful ignorance about the modern game. There's nothing wrong, everything's fantastic, the threes are brilliant, the skills are amazing. There's nothing wrong with the modern NBA to these specific fans.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
Now, one last thing I do want to touch on and hammer home. When Charles Barkley has these takes, these quote-unquote negative takes, if they were just outlandish, not rooted in reality, fans would brush them off, ignore them, and not really pay attention to them. But the thing is, Charles Barkley, his takes, they resonate and make sense to a lot of NBA fans. Whether it be calling out superstar players underperforming, load management, or the absurd amount of threes being taken on a given night. In a way, Charles Barkley kind of a megaphone or a medium for a lot of NBA fans who aren't satisfied with the modern NBA game. If you ask a lot of fans who've watched numerous eras from the 70s, the 80s till now, a lot of those fans agree with Charles and love his takes. Again, is Charles always right? No, nobody is. But what he says resonates and makes sense for the vast majority of fans.
I'm beginning to agree with you.
The biggest mistake JJ could make, Adam Silver could make, is brushing those fans off as delusional, being old heads, or nostalgic, stuck in their ways. If you ignore an entire generation of fans who watched the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, but don't like today's game, you're going to lose their kids' kids, and future eras of would-be basketball fans. So that right there is the end of the video, and I'll say one last thing. Being quote-unquote negative or critical, it's not inherently a bad thing. What Barkley is doing right now in the short term can be viewed as hating or being overly critical. But in the long run, 10, 15 years from now, what Barkley is doing in the moment will be revered and remembered as a great service to NBA fans. As of course, looking at today's era, guys like Durant, LeBron, of course, and Adam Silver, more and more often coming out of the woodwork saying today's game has a problem that must be acknowledged. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.